folks, John Cordisco back from Cordisco's Chess Center in Binghamton, New York. That's in upstate New York. With another video for you today. This is a game that I played in the US Amateur East Championship in Parsippany, New Jersey in February of last year, 2012. It's an interesting game. I think I'm going to title this game Can't See the Forest for the Trees. And you'll see why as we continue on. Give you some background on this game. I was board number 4. I was the lowest rated player. We were in the under 1800 section, I believe. It might have been 1900, I don't recall. Anyway, I was on board 4, and this was the very last round, and my opponent was rated about 300 rating points higher than I was. At the time I was rated 1537. My opponent was rated 1825. And you'll see as I go on, this is a very important game for the team as well as myself. Sometimes when you're winning and you know you're winning, it's the most difficult time. And let's go through the game and I'll show you what happened. I played e4, c5. I'm not going to go into the opening too much. I'm going to make the first few moves here just to get the video going here. I went c4. Kind of a Maroczy bind setup. I didn't want to play the normal stuff. Being this guy was 300 rating points higher than I was, I thought I might just play. And I went bishop b2. He went g6. Knight c3. Bishop g7. And white castled. Black went e6. This move surprised me a little bit. I know he has to get the light squared bishop out, but I thought maybe he might go b6 and move the light squared bishop, you know, fianchetto it here. But he decided not to do that. And I went queen to c2. And he went a6. And I went a3. I wanted to keep his knight out of this square here. I didn't want this pesky knight coming in and giving me any grief. And so far we're just playing along. He made knight on g to e7. And I went d3. And he castled. And I went bishop f4, getting my bishop right out of the fight right away. And he went h6. And I went g to d2. Now that I have my bishop out, I'm going to create a battery here. My bishops and queen are pretty strong down this battery here. We control all these squares. What I was forcing them to do is force him to move his king either here or move the pawn here, one of the two. And of course he went king to h7 to guard the pawn. And then went rook a to b1. Kind of in a way making him go king and h7, picked up a tempo, which is important. Picking up time is everything. He went knight to d4, which I was a little surprised at. And I moved my bishop to d2. Now it's funny. You just get intuition sometimes and you can't explain it. I wanted to save my light squared bishop. I didn't know why. I could have, you know, let him take it and moved a different piece. But something told me to keep it. And you're going to see later in the game that this light squared bishop ended up being the hero of the whole game here. And he went knight on e to c6, reinforcing his knight. Now I played knight takes. He played pawn takes. And I went knight to e2. So we're just moving along. He went e5, threatening my bishop. I can see the pawn storm is going to start here any second. I went bishop g3, and he went f5. I'm thinking, okay, here we go. It's starting. I've got to find an escape square for my bishop because he's going to play pawn here, and then when I move the bishop he's going to play pawn here, and my bishop is trapped. So I thought to myself, oh boy, I'm going to end up moving H pawn to here, tucking my bishop here. Oh, this is going to be ugly. And I thought for a while, well, this is a crucial part of the game for me. And I said, oh, the heck with it. I'm the lowest rated. I've got nothing to lose. Let's go for it. And I went F4. And he played F takes E4. And I played D takes E4. He went bishop to E6 to attack my pawn. And I went B3 to guard my pawn. And I went, and he went queen to B6. What you'll find later is that move ended up taking his queen pretty much out of the game in the end for the king. And you'll see that that might have been an error. Now what he's trying to do, he's trying to have a discovered attack by moving his black pawn here, thus threatening my knight and at the same time checking me. Now I could move the bishop here, but it'd just be a pain in the behind. So what I did was I just moved my queen here. It's a good defensive piece anyway. It's a good spot. And later I can bring her out over on the king side in case I need it. He went knight to E7. It's apparent he's bringing his knight around to the king side. I went bishop C2. I'm creating a battery right down the line. This queen bishop battery can be very strong depending on the situation. And he went rook to F7. He wants to double up his rooks. And I attacked his knight with bishop H4. He went knight to G8. He's going to swing his knight around. You'll find out a little later. And I sat here for quite a while looking at this. I thought to myself, well, maybe now's my opportunity to bust up his kingside pawns. My dark squared bishop has got some escape squares now in case he gets some pawn moves here, here, and here. And I thought, I gave this a lot of thought. And I thought to myself, I really have nothing to lose. And I went F5. We're going to open it up. We're going to open it up. He went G5, attacking my bishop. Now I'm looking at the screen here, and it says F takes E6. Doesn't really win a piece. Because he'll just take, once this pawn takes the bishop, this rook will take this rook check. And then after I recapture, he'll take my bishop here. So it's not really winning a piece. So I looked at this for quite a while and I gave it some thought. And I said, ah, the heck with it. And I played bishop takes G5. I'm trying to break down one of his defending pawns. Now, for those of you that are experts or above watching this video, this isn't Grandmaster chess because we're not Grandmasters. We're like 99% of the people that play chess. We just love to play. And he played pawn takes, and I played pawn takes bishop, and he played rook takes rook check. I played rook takes rook, and he played knight to H6. And this is the point, I think, in the game, roughly, where I'm on the fourth board. I'm on the end, the lowest rated player. And oddly enough, he was the lowest rated player on board 4 at 300 points higher than I was. And I looked to my left to see how my other 3 teammates were doing. And all the boards were empty and everybody was gone. I went, whoa. So I went over to the team captain, John Cardinelli. He's a good guy. He's a longtime expert here in Binghamton, New York, and asked him what the results were. I was just curious. And all 3 of my teammates drew. And I went, uh-oh, I've got to win this game. Because if I draw, we're tied. And we were fighting for first place in the section. And I had to win for my team and for myself, both. So there was a lot of pressure. So I went B4, just to tighten up the pawns on that side. I've got my queen guarding my A pawn, just to tighten things up a little bit in case I had moved my bishop. This pawn wouldn't be captured by the queen. He went rook to E8, and I went knight to G3. Of course, I'm trying to put my knight here in hopes that he would take, and I could take with this pawn here But of course it didn't happen. We can all wish. He played rook takes pawn. I played knight to f5 anyway. He played rook to f6. I played knight takes knight. He played rook takes rook. And I played king takes rook. And he played bishop takes knight. Now here we are. And I'm looking and I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, great. We've got opposite color bishops and a queen pawn ending. I can't really think of many more games that are more complicated. And on top of that, I have to win against an opponent that's rated 300 rating points higher than I am. I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be fun. So I buckled in, you know, for this game that I knew I had to win. I went queen to f3. This king is pretty wide open. I'm going to treat the queen like a rook, put her on a nice open file. He went queen to c7. Trying to guard the file on his king, and I went right away check. Might as well get the queen right on his king immediately. And he went king to g7. Now, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, I have the computer running as well. Suggest to move queen to e6. I didn't do that. What I decided to do was I went bishop b3, which is the second selection of the computer. Now, this has multi-purpose move. It protects the pawn here. And also, this bishop barreling down this diagonal is brutal because he has a dark squared bishop. And so he's weak with light squares all around his king. And this light squared bishop, you'll see later, with my queen in tandem, is just a monster on his position. He went b6. I think he was just waiting to see what I was going to do. And I went king to e2. Just in case there's any exchanges on this side of the board and his queen gets down here, I wanted the king a little bit closer so he couldn't check. He went a5. Now this one here, I looked for a long time. I thought to myself, well, I've got a extra pawn on the king side. I've got my queen right on his king. I've got a beautiful light squared bishop. As soon as I move my c pawn to bear down on him. His dark squared bishop is basically worthless. If you're wondering why earlier when I took his knight on h6 instead of his bishop, because all of his center pawns are on dark squares. And I thought that would make his bishop much, much less effective. So I took his knight instead, and it worked out that way. And I gave this a lot of thought. And I looked at this and I looked at this, you know, with everything on the line, and I went h4. I figured he'd take, which he did immediately. I thought having this open file here, you know, on his king would do some good. The pawn now is off to the side. The bishop and the pawn can't help each other, and the king to guard the king. But as you can see on the bottom of the computer screen, it's got 0.00, of course, which is exactly dead even. Now, being I'm 300 points less rated than my opponent, that's not bad. I moved 36 with queens on the board, having a dead drawn position, but I had to win. And I knew it the whole time, and I went queen to g4 check. And this is where I say that you can't see the forest for the trees, because this is the point where I was winning, and I didn't realize I was so far ahead. I was so concentrating on trying to mate his king that I missed some simple moves and almost blew the game. And you'll see. He went king to h7. Now, of course, I'm thinking here, okay, you've got him in the corner. You've got his king cornered. You've got light square supremacy. Everything's right where it should be. And then I'm looking at pawn to c5. Pawn c here. And what that does, it opens up this diagonal for my light squared bishop. Be brutal down those squares. And also on top of that, I'm threatening the queen here mate at the same time. So that's what I did. I went c5. Now I'm threatening mate here. He has to guard for that. He went bishop to g7. Now I'm looking at the computer. I didn't realize at this point that I was a full queen up in score. If you look at the bottom of the screen, it's got almost 11 points in over 9. I mean, in essence, my position is I'm up a full queen. I suggest h5 check and f5 check. I didn't do that. I took the pawn. You get materialistic. You don't want to be down. Plus, I wanted to start to thrust this pawn up maybe later if I could. I had no clue that I was really this far ahead. He went bishop h6 to block. And I went queen to g4. Right back threatening mate again. He went bishop back to g7. I went queen to h5 check. I'm starting to inch in closer. He went bishop h6. And this is where I started getting frustrated. Because I knew I had him. I knew I had at least a draw. But a draw wasn't good enough. Because three of my teammates all drew. And it was up to me to pull this game off. And so I'm sitting here, and the harder you try, the more frustrated you get. It's just trying too hard. And so I looked at queen to e8. I figured, okay, I'm threatening mate here again with a bishop. He has to guard against that. And he went bishop g7. Now, this is a move I did not see. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Bishop here. Check. He has to go here with his king. And after that, it's just brutal. Just brutal. Queen checks here. And he gets out in the open and the game's over. I didn't see it. I knew something was there. I just didn't see it. So I went back to h5 check. Of course, he went bishop to h6. Being he's a much higher rated player, he's probably seeing all this. So at this point, I'm getting so frustrated. I went queen to a5 check. And he went king to g7. And this is the point that I was just so frustrated with myself. I knew there was a win here. I didn't know how. Of course, you can't see the computer screen with a score on it. But I knew there was something there. And this was going to be a blown opportunity. I mean, how many times do you get to be the winning game on your team in the US Amateur East in New Jersey? I mean, it just doesn't happen. And we would tie for first if I won this game. And being the lowest rated player, I had something to prove. So I just couldn't stand it anymore, and I had some extra time on my clock. And I went outside. Now, I used to smoke back then, so I was kind of an oxymoron. I went outside to have a cigarette to get some fresh air. Anyway, it was the middle of February in New Jersey, and I didn't bring a coat. It's a little chilly. I wanted to get some cold air on me, and stop being so aggravated and clear my mind and start thinking clearly. And my team captain, John Cardinelli, told me just to relax and clear your mind and come back. And so I spent about 10 minutes or so out in the cold without a coat, chilled down a little bit. And I came back to the table, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going, there's something here. I kept going over my mind, there's something here, there's something here. And then it hit me. I'm glad I took that break. Now, if you're looking at the computer now on the bottom, it says C takes B pawn or queen to G4 check. What I saw was C takes B pawn, threatening his queen. And I'm sitting there, and when I saw it, I went, oh my God, there it is. And when I said that, my opponent must have heard me softly say it under my breath, because he looked up with a very distressed look on his face, not knowing which move. Of course, they both win, but... And I played C takes B6. Now, we know that the queen can't take the pawn, because I go queen check, king goes here, and then queen goes here, mate. So that's out. He can't take the pawn. Say he moves the queen here. I'll just take pawn takes pawn. And now I have connected pass pawns, and he's doomed. So he can't do any of that. And it looks pretty gruesome for him. There's not much he can do. And he spent about a minute looking at this position, and he resigned. And it's funny. Sometimes you just put it together just when you need it, when you let your frustrations kind of ebb away from you, and you just clear your mind and you can figure it out. I was the better player that day, even though I'm rated quite a bit under my opponent. And it reminded me of the US hockey team in the movie Miracle on Ice in 1980, when the Americans played the Russians in hockey. And the coach was giving the speech in the movie. He says, you know, we can play these guys 10 times, and 9 times they're going to beat us, but not today. And that day was my day. I'm pretty proud of this game. It's not Grandmaster chess, but we're not Grandmasters. And that day, I put it together just when my team needed it, and also for myself. And we ended up tying for first place in our section, but unfortunately we lost on tie breaks. But it's still good. We've never been to the I've never been to the US Amateur East before. It's quite a big deal if anybody gets to go to it. It's well over 1,000 players, 1,200 players. It's quite the deal. And if anybody can go to that, I strongly suggest that you do. It's a great experience. Anyway, so that's my game. Just regular players playing the best they can. And that's the idea of this whole game, is not to play Grandmaster chess. Not for us. Not for the 99% that play this game. What we need to do is play the best we can. Just a hair above our best. And those are the games that we're proud of. So signing off, I want you to remember, if you think that chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Bye-bye.